There we go. All right. What's going on, everybody? It's day 4063 of the quarantine, and I've been working on comedy bits to submit to Sirius Radio today. So that's what I've been doing while I'm sitting around in the quarantine state. But I got a letter yesterday, an actual letter in the mail. I didn't even know that this still happened. I didn't even know that these type of letters still circulated. But it's an amazing letter, and I wanted to share it with whoever is interested in hearing about this. One of the things that my friends have said in the recent years is that I should do a seminar on critical thinking. That I should you should tell people how to do critical thinking. You should show people how to ask these questions, and how to not get ripped off, how to not get gypped, because honest to goodness, there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of rip-off artists, con artists, scam artists out there, and it is it must work. I get these emails and I get letters, and I wonder, why do they still do this? Because it doesn't work. It's so obviously a scam and so obviously a ripoff that why do these people even continue to do this? Well, it occurred to me after I got this letter yesterday that there must be people out there that this works on. And so I'm going to try and talk to you people who this works on. Okay. And I'm doing it with compassion and sympathy and understanding. I am not making fun of you. Now, there's a good chance that I'm going to laugh throughout this because I can't help it. But understand that I am not making fun of you. All right. So if you're the type of person who has gotten emails or letters in the mail and you've been duped by something that you've received, or been duped by some scam, I wanted to go through this letter with you and give you my process for how I keep from being ripped off. It's not 100%. There are some techniques that people could do. You can get emails that all you have to do is open them up. If you just open them up in your inbox, you can get a virus, and you can get people can get a hold of your information. So that's going to happen. This is my technique for avoiding getting ripped off when it is possible to avoid getting ripped off. All right. So here we go. This is the letter that I got. This is the envelope that it arrived in yesterday in my mailbox. Now, the first thing you can do when you get a piece of mail is you can learn a lot from the envelope itself. You can learn a lot from the packaging of the material. If you will notice, there is a there's a return address, oops, over here, where it belongs. But if you go and look for that address, it doesn't really tell you very much. 150 York Street, Toronto, Ontario, is very vague and nondescript. There's no names for businesses. There's no people's names up here. It's just an address. That's a little suspicious. On the back of the envelope, there's nothing either. There's no watermarks. There's no logos. There's nothing. It's just an envelope like you could buy at Staples. And then also look at my address. Okay. It's printed on there, kind of cockeyed. It's a little bit cockeyed, and it's in all caps, and it's typed. Now, that is not suspicious necessarily, but if you understand that typed messages like this are usually typed because they're sent to many, many, many people. So the fact that my address and name and everything is typed here on the envelope, that tells me that I'm not the only person that received a letter similar to this, which, again, wouldn't be a problem except for the type of letter that this is. So I'm going to read you the letter. All right. So this is the envelope. So that's all that we have, the context that we get started with. All right. So here's the letter. Let's see if I can make it to come up here. I think I can. I can. Let's make it bigger. All right. So there's the letter. Again, there's no letterhead. There's no logo. There's nothing except a piece of single typewritten typewriter paper with this letter on it. So it still doesn't tell me who it's from. It says, "Dear John Branyan" at the top in all caps. Dear John Branyan. It's dated April 9th, 2020, and that's it. That's all the information I have. First paragraph says, "I'm aware that this letter has come to you as a surprise, as we have not met before or handled any business deals in the past." Now, that's the first line of that letter. "I am aware this letter has come as a surprise. We have not met before." Right. And we still haven't met because he hasn't told me his name. "Nevertheless, I have contacted you with genuine intentions, and I hope I can trust you with this inheritance opportunity, which will be explained below." So he still has not told me his name in the first paragraph. No salutation saying, "Hi, I am with this guy." Instead, it's he has contacted me with genuine intentions. Basically, when someone has to assure me in the first paragraph that their intentions are genuine, I'm suspicious. Anytime somebody says, "I'm telling you the truth," or "I'm being honest with you," if people have to underline the fact that they're being honest, if people have to emphasize that their intentions are good, then their intentions are probably not good. Generally, when people have good intentions, they just have good intentions and they don't feel the need to express those good intentions unless they're suspicious that you might think that they're trying to scam you. So if this guy thinks that I might be suspicious of this letter, then he would open with a paragraph like that. "I'm aware that this has come as a surprise to you. So you're aware of that. Why would I think that this is a surprise? Well, because we've not met before or handled any business deals. So I'm coming at you with genuine intentions." So he knows that my radar is already going to be up. That's what this whole first paragraph is for. It's designed to put me at ease. Finally, in the second paragraph, he says, "My name is Brian Sanders, an account manager." Brian Sanders. You don't get much more vanilla than that. If he just said, "My name is Joe Brown," that would have been a little more generic. But Brian Sanders is about as vanilla as you get. And if Brian Sanders is listening to this, again, no offense personally, but Brian Sanders, I'll bet there's a billion Brian Sanders. "An account manager with one of the bank in Canada." And it literally says an account manager with one of the bank in Canada. Now, I'm the type of person who understands that typos get made, that people make mistakes when they're writing correspondence. That happens from time to time. Generally, it doesn't happen in official formal letters like this. If somebody writes to you and says, I'm an account manager at one of the bank in Canada, that should make you suspicious. Typos in formal letters like this are cause for suspicion. I retrieved your contact address in my search of the next of kin to a deceased customer of our bank, Mr. Matt Brannion, a citizen of your country who lived and died in London, Ontario, Canada, from cataract arrest in the year 2009. That's all one sentence. I retrieved your contact address in my search of the next of kin to a deceased customer of our bank, Mr. Matt Brannion, a citizen of your country who lived and died in London, Ontario, Canada from cardiac arrest in the year 2009. Now, when you encounter a sentence like that and you have to read it more than once, that should also raise a red flag. When you get a letter in the mail or an email and it has sentences that you have to read more than once, rather than assuming that there's something wrong with your reading comprehension, rather than assuming that you're just the dummy because you didn't understand what was being said, it's better to assume that it's a really badly constructed sentence and there's something fishy about it. That's a horrible sentence. That is a horrible sentence. It contains virtually no punctuation, and it slams at least 4 different ideas together into one sentence. It's a bad sentence. And you have to read it over and over and over again. Be suspicious of that. Okay, so that's 2 red flags so far. First of all, the guy starts out by not telling me who he is, but that I should trust him. And secondarily, he says that he got my contact information through some search of a next of kin for a customer in his bank. Now, if you are a bank account representative, you can't contact strangers and divulge information about your customers, even if those customers have passed away in 2009 from cardiac arrest or whatever. You can't divulge your customer's information. I know that. If he's a legit account executive for this bank, he can't be telling me about Matt Brannion passing away. It's not legal. So there's another red flag. Unfortunately, this customer died intestate, leaving his bank account with an open beneficiary status. Now, the word intestate means that he died without a will. You should be suspicious when people put in words like intestate when they could have said he died without a will. Because generally speaking, you want to be clear and easy to understand. And so if you receive a letter that you have to look up words in that letter, that's a red flag as well. A real estate manager, somebody who was legitimate, would write to me assuming that I'm not good at understanding written language. And so they would be very clear, they would be very concise, and they would not use words like intestate. They would say things like, he died without a will. All right, leaving his bank account open for many years. All efforts made by our bank to locate his relatives had been unsuccessful, though I decided to write to you as I have monitored this account in the bank for about 10 years now, and no one has come forth with any claim. I would like to present you to our bank as his next of kin to claim this dormant account worth, drumroll, $7.8 million. $7.8 million. First, nobody has come forward in the last 10 years to claim $7.8 million in this bank. Now, have you wondered which bank Brian Sanders works at? I have. That was my first question. one of the bank in Canada. Which bank? It helps if you imagine actually having this conversation face to face. If you imagine Brian Sanders as an actual person standing in front of you talking to you, and he walks up and he says, "Hey, I work with one of the banks in Canada," what would your first question be? If he said, "I work with a bank in Canada," what would your first question be? Which bank? Which bank, Brian? There's a lot of banks in Canada. When you tell people where you work, if somebody says, "Where are you employed?" you wouldn't say, "I'm employed at a business in my country. I work for my employer. He's a business. It's a business in my country." That's vague and stupid. Nobody talks like that. When you're talking face to face, you give out this information like immediately. There's no hiding it. He would have told me which bank he works at, but he hasn't. He hasn't told me which bank he works at. So now he's telling me that it's been 10 years and their bank has made every effort to contact the next of kin from Matt Branyan, but they haven't found anybody. So he's going to present me to his bank in order to claim the next of kin. In order to claim this $7.8 million, he's going to have me basically commit fraud. That's what this letter is. Because if you're suspicious, is it legal? Is it legal for me to go in and claim to be a relative of somebody that I'm not a relative of? Is it legal to do that? It doesn't seem legal. It seems like I'm not an expert on the law, but it doesn't seem honest to go in and claim to be a relative of somebody in order to get an inheritance. That doesn't seem legal. It's not. So now I sort of understand why there's no letterhead and why there's no official statement from Brian Sanders. There's no officiality to this letter because he's a criminal. He basically said it right here. I want to present you to my bank. Okay. So now I have a decision to make. Am I cool with me and Brian going into cahoots to rip off this bank? Am I cool with that? Am I wanting to ride with his gang of outlaws? If I do, then I can read on. But at this point, once you realize that Brian is a criminal, you can wad up the letter and throw it away. If you're not looking to commit fraud, to commit a crime, then you can safely wad up this letter and throw it away and recognize it as a scam. However, if you do want to go into business of professional criminalism, if you want to go ahead and throw in with Brian and commit this crime, then you can read on. Okay, I'll help you read on, and we'll see if we can determine whether or not Brian is a trustworthy criminal or not. You will apply to the bank as an extended relative to the deceased customer while I work from the inside to make sure all needed information and evidence are provided to you to back up your claim. The account has an open beneficiary status, which is why I have contacted you to come forth and claim the funds as the next of kin and beneficiary. Since he is from your country and you both share the same last name, it's easy for you to become his official next of kin. If we do not make a claim to the funds now, the funds would be reverted back to the system as an unclaimed estate at the expiration of a 10-year dormancy period as provided. Okay, well, he's already told me that it's been 10 years. So how are we not past that dormancy? But be that as it may, the account has an open beneficiary status, which is why I've contacted you to come forth and claim the funds. He's going to work on the inside to make sure all needed information and evidence is provided to me to back up my claims. Now, you need to ask this question. If you want to become a criminal with Brian Sanders, you need to ask this question. Why does he need me? Why does he need me to be the one who claims to be the next of kin? Because if he's going to work from the inside to make sure that all the needed information and evidence is provided to back up the claims, why can't he do that himself? Or why can't he do that with one of his friends? Right? If he has all of the necessary means for perpetuating this fraud, for making my claim seem legitimate, why does he need me? What am I other than my last name, which doesn't matter. It just because that I don't have to have the same last name as somebody in my family. Right? I can be part of an estate. I can be part of an inheritance for somebody without sharing their last name. That's not a prerequisite. So these are the questions you need to ask yourself when you're going through this, so you don't get ripped off. If you and Brian are trying to rip off the bank, it's not going to do you any good if you get ripped off at the same time. Okay? So before you rip off somebody else, make sure you're not being ripped off first. Somebody says maybe he's in prison. That's possible. It's possible he's in prison. I assure you this transaction would be handled under due inheritance procedures, and every necessary arrangement will be put in place to make you the real beneficiary of the inheritance. Okay, so this last paragraph, he was telling me about how we're going to just claim that you're the beneficiary. We're going to claim that you're the beneficiary, and I'll just make sure that that claim is legitimate. Then he assures me that this transaction would be handled under due inheritance procedures, and every necessary arrangement will be put in place to make me the real beneficiary. So you got to read and ask yourself this question. If you're going to make sure that I'm the real beneficiary, then what's the point in all of this subterfuge and manipulation of the data in the first place? If you're going to make me the real beneficiary, why do I need to pretend to be the beneficiary? It also requires all confidentiality at this stage. Now, when you're reading letters or emails or claims or promotional material or brochures on timeshares, or when you're reading something that is a sales pitch, a scheme, a deal, anything that's a scheme or a deal or a system. When the person pitching the system says it requires all confidentiality at this stage, and I believe that you are ready to keep this absolutely discreet. Discretion is always a red flag word. When somebody contacts you out of the blue who you don't know, and they start asking for your discretion, they start asking that you keep it to your hat. Anytime somebody asks you to, hey, let's just keep this between us, red flag, especially if that person is a stranger. Strangers who don't want you to talk to other people are always, 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 always ripping you off. Strangers who don't want you to consult with family, who don't want you to talk to friends, who don't want you to call an attorney, strangers who want you to keep things discreet are ripping you off. Once the funds are released, it will be shared between the two of us. Okay, now if Brian and I are having that conversation, if Brian says, once the funds are secured, we're going to share it between the two of us, what would your next question be? If you were talking to him face to face, you would say, how are we going to do that? Is it going to go in your bank? Are we going to have briefcases? Are we going to have big sacks with dollar signs on them and we're going to trade them back and forth? How are we going to share this money? $7.8 million is enough money. It's a significant enough sum of money that I would want to have at least a couple of details about how we're going to share that. But there's nothing. Once the funds are released, it will be shared between the two of us. So please send your response to my personal email, briansanders205@gmail.com, indicating your readiness to proceed with this transaction. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, when somebody asks for my response so that he can proceed with this transaction, he's going to rip me off. Anybody with access to funds, anybody with access to $7.8 million, anybody who can legitimately turn over an inheritance of $7.8 million already has all of the information he needs about me, or should have it. If I have to contact Brian and fill him in on any details so that he can get this going, it's a scam. He's ripping me off. He's ripping me off. You should make an email and call it Brian Sanders 206. Yeah. No, I don't want to do that. I have no way of knowing what sort of implications are going to be drawn from this, or what sort of consequences are going to be brought down on the owner of this email address. My guess is that this email address doesn't even exist for longer than a week, and then it will disappear. But what's going to happen from here is, if I sent a note to Brian, no, it wouldn't happen if I did it. If you sent a note to Brian thinking that this is legitimate, then Brian would then know that you have read his letter and that you are interested. Then he would start to ask for information from you, and it would be, he would get your, he would make sure that your address is correct. He would want to verify your address, and he would want to verify your phone number. And he would ask you leading questions to get information from you, all under the guise of saying, this is necessary so that I can fill out the paperwork and expedite or get this money to you quicker. That's what he's going to do. And eventually, I don't know how gifted he is as a hacker, but it's eventually he will know passwords. He will be able to get into your bank account, and he will be able to extract funds, because he would, when you're splitting the money, he would say, I'm going to need to know your bank account so that I can have the funds wired to your bank account. And he's not going to wire any funds to your bank account. So, bottom line, to summarize, how you keep from getting ripped off, Dan Wagner, it might not be a scam. He might be a Nigerian prince. Yeah, he might. But usually they lead with that. Usually if you're talking to a Nigerian prince, they tell you in the first paragraph that they are a Nigerian prince. But that's a good thought. So here's the summary. When you are contacted by a stranger, and that stranger puts no personal information into the beginning of the contact information, that's a red flag. Anybody that contacts you and doesn't tell you who they are specifically so that you can check it out, they're scamming you. All right. So strangers who don't introduce themselves other than with vague names, they're ripping you off. They need to tell you who they are, the company that they've worked for, how long they've worked for that company, by what authority they are contacting you in the first place. And if none of that information is at the top of their letter, then it's a ripoff. You need to ask yourself the question, why are you contacting me? If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. That is sage advice. He is offering me $7.8 million. And that's too good to be true. I can't imagine a windfall of $7.8 million. He's asking for discretion. When somebody contacts you and asks that you be discreet and you keep things under your hat, that is a huge red flag. Yeah. Strangers that contact you and ask you to be discreet are going to rip you off. So you can immediately dismiss them. Greed is always going to get you into trouble. Greed is going to get you into trouble. If you are enticed by the possibility of getting $7.8 million by just contacting this guy, If you think that contacting this guy, maybe it's a long shot, but contacting him could get you $7.8 million, that's your greed talking to you. That's greed and it's selfishness, and it will get you into trouble if you act on it. Acting on greed will get you into trouble. There will be consequences if you act on greed. So ask yourself that question before you respond to any of these deals. Am I being greedy? Am I being greedy? And in this particular case, do I have to lie to get the money? Do I have to pretend to be a relative of this person in order to get this money? If I do, that's dishonest. If I have to be dishonest in order to get the money, there's consequences for that. And then the final thought that I wanted to address is the idea that, and I know that some of you have this idea, and I want to talk to you like a big brother or like a father or like a grandfather, depending on your circumstances. But if you have ever had the attitude, well, I know that this is probably not legitimate, but what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? I might as well give it a shot. That is the same mentality that causes people to buy lottery tickets. The what have I got to lose mentality is why people buy lottery tickets, because they know when they buy the ticket that it's a long shot. They know they're probably not going to win, but what have I got to lose? The answer to what have I got to lose in the case of a lottery ticket is $2. You got $2 to lose, or $10, depending on the cost of the lottery ticket. But you lost $2. And so when the lottery ticket doesn't pay off, you console yourself by saying, well, it's just $2. And it could have been millions, but it wasn't. So basically you're out $2. That's the way it worked. You didn't win anything. And yes, you had the possibility of getting millions, but you didn't get millions. And so the what have I got to lose attitude is not a good reason to make a decision. It's never a good idea to make a decision because it probably won't work, but it's not that big a deal. In this case, $2, $2. Yes, but it's $2 that you don't have. It's $2 that you don't have anymore. And you knew when you bought the ticket that you were probably throwing that money away. So these are the attitudes that you need to focus on. This is what you need to think about. What have I got to lose is not a good reason to make a decision. It's not a good reason to make a decision. And the flip side of that coin is, but look at what I could gain. Yes, look what I could gain is just the flip side. It's the same mentality. And it's based on greed. Look what I could get. I could get $7 million. For $7 million, I'll roll the dice. I'll contact Brian. What's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is he could clean out your bank account, or he could get a hold of information from your family. He could get a hold of your mailing list. You know, we're living in this coronavirus age where everybody's worried about how their actions are going to affect somebody else. Same thing's going to happen here if you want to be worried about it. If you open up your email to a scammer and he gets a hold of your mailing list, then he can send people emails that look like you. And maybe one of your friends or a loved one isn't hip to the whole scamming scene, and they'll get ripped off because you opened up your email account to this Yahoo. The best thing to do is imagine that you're standing face to face talking to this person. Read the letter as if the person is actually talking to you face to face. And then it becomes pretty obvious when things are not true, when things are fishy, when there's red flags. So I hope this helps. I'm not going to contact Brian Sanders. I don't recommend that you contact him either. I probably shouldn't have even put his email in this video, but Yeah, I wouldn't contact Brian. First of all, I don't think his name is Brian. I don't think he works at a bank. I don't think there's any money to be inherited. I think all of this is untrue. I think it's all a lie. And it's designed to play on the emotions that we all have that are, well, what if it's true? Can I take the chance for $7.8 million? What if it's true? What if I'm passing up an opportunity? That's called fear of loss, and it's a very powerful psychological manipulation tool. If I can convince you that you are really missing out on an excellent deal if you don't contact me, if I can convince you, I don't even have to convince you. If I can just make you wonder if maybe I might be telling the truth, then I've got you. Don't let people make you curious. Don't let people do that to you. Don't let people entice you with this possibility that there's vast riches just waiting for you. But you got to be discreet, and you got to give me a little information. You got to give me something to work with here. We're talking about millions of dollars. You got to give me something, and then I'll make you rich. It's greed, and it's deceptive, and it'll hurt you. It'll hurt you. So don't fall for it. I could be the next Matt Branyan. I could. Well, see, that's the other thing too. I don't even think there was a Matt Branyan. I think everything in this letter is bogus. Everything is bogus. Who lived and died in London. A citizen of your country who lived and died in London, Ontario, Canada, from cardiac arrest. And he capitalized cardiac arrest as if cardiac arrest is a person. You know, cardiac arrest is an official title. It's you probably can't see it. You can't see it. And it's backwards. Some opportunities are great opportunities to learn how to pass on opportunities. That's worth quoting. I'm going to put that up there so that you guys can see it. Yeah, opportunities are they do come along. Opportunity knocks once in a while. But the thing to keep in mind is if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And it really is that simple. I had these conversations with my parents when I was a kid. When I was a kid, my parents helped me learn how to not get ripped off because they taught me to always ask for more information, always ask follow-up questions. And if something doesn't seem like it fits together, then ask a question and find out if you're really missing something or if it truly doesn't fit together. If you're just misunderstanding or if you're getting if there's some shady stuff going on. So, vague dialogue and non-specific speech is very suspicious, because if you're talking about giving me $7.8 million or helping me get in touch with $7.8 million of inheritance, there needs to be some very specific language about that. That's a lot of money. And you don't just kind of go, we'll split it up. And I work for a bank and you send me your information and I'll do the stuff on the inside of the bank. That's all very vague. For $7.8 million, there should be a lot of specific information that goes back and forth. So, all right. Well, if you get any messages from Nigerian princes or princesses or anybody in the email, then be suspicious. And if you've got anybody in your family, if you know anybody in your family who is susceptible to this kind of stuff, I don't want to be real hard on those people, because generally people who get ripped off by stuff like this they're not stupid people, but they're naive people. And they come from a perspective of genuinely believing that human beings are good, that humans are basically good, and that people don't want to rip them off. And people are mostly honest for the most part. And it's not that they're bad people. The people, your grandmother, your uncle, your spouse, your siblings, people that you care about who get ripped off by these letters. It's not that they're bad people. They're just naive. They're not skeptical enough, and they don't think critically. They assume that people are good. And the one of the kindest things that you can do for those people is try to set up with them that before they act on anything like this, before they actually disclose information to somebody, before they make a phone call, before they return before they do anything, just say, hey, would you contact me first and let me take a look at that? That's the kindest thing you can do. You're probably not going to be able to teach them how to process these types of things the way you can. You probably can't teach them. Grandma, bless her heart, is always going to be susceptible to these kind of things because she doesn't believe that people are going to rip her off. So you need to step in for grandma or grandpa or whoever it is that gets ripped off by this stuff. You need to step in and say, look, I love you. I care about you. Before you do anything, before you tell anybody anything, let me see. Let me see what it is that you're going to tell them. Let me see the letter. Don't make a move until you clear it with me because I care about you. That's the best thing to do. You can forward this video to them if you want to. Just don't be impatient with them if they don't understand why you sent it to them. Dan Wagner, he was from Canada. 7.8 million Canadian dollars isn't as much as it sounds. Maybe it's not worth the risk. Well, he said it was going to be US dollars. He said it was $7.8 million US. He was clear about that. He just didn't tell me which bank it was going to come from. All right, guys, that's it. That's it. I'm going to finish my ginger ale, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Starving Comics Quarantine Show tomorrow at 7:00. So you should tune in for that. Joan DeVivo is going to be with us. Bob Smiley, Johnny W. And we're going to play a game. All right. See you guys.